One phone call to the Pentagon was all it took. The road curved gently through thick pine groves and broken farmland, the kind of scenery that looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s. Louisiana heat clung to the air like syrup, and General Naomi Ellsworth had one hand lightly on the steering wheel of her rental sedan, the other gripping a secure phone that had begun to blink weakly. She didn't like that. Her route was familiar, carved into muscle memory from decades of military travel, small towns, empty highways, checkpoints in the middle of nowhere. She had driven this stretch between Lake Charles and Shreveport at least a dozen times in her career. But today was different. Today, she was en route to a confidential meeting at Barksdale Air Force Base, classified, urgent, and not the kind of thing that could be rescheduled. The bars on her phone dropped to 1. Then none. Unacceptable, she muttered. As she crested a hill, a dusty, time-worn gas station came into view, Kelly's Fuel and Food. It looked like it had once been something more, a full-service garage maybe, long before time and poverty took its toll. She slowed down and turned into the cracked parking lot, steering toward a spot away from the front door. A few men leaned against faded pickup trucks near the pumps, drinking sodas and watching the world go by. They barely glanced at her. Naomi liked it that way. She wore no insignia, no polished stars. Just jeans, sneakers, and a light olive jacket that covered the unmistakable presence of a woman built by command. Her hair was tucked under a navy baseball cap, pulled low over sharp, intelligent eyes. She stepped out of the car, held her phone up, and moved a few paces toward the clearing near the edge of the lot. General Ellsworth verifying identity, she spoke into the phone, her voice crisp but quiet. Initiating briefing now. The line clicked. A Pentagon liaison responded immediately. Confirmed, General. Proceeding with real-time movement updates, priority level Alpha. Are you in a secure location? Naomi scanned the area. Nothing but heat, gravel, and a rusty ice machine humming nearby. Affirmative. Begin transmission. As the voice on the other end launched into a list of high-level movements and code-phrased intelligence, Naomi's training kept her eyes moving. She noticed the men at the pumps glance her way now and then, but not with real suspicion, yet. Inside the station, however, it was a different story. Behind the counter, Paula Sweeney peered through the dusty window blinds, her lips already pursed in judgment. She was 50-something, blonde hair wound into a tight knot like a statement of control, and her world was as narrow as the windows she peered out of. Paula didn't see a general. She didn't see a leader coordinating with National Defense Command. She saw a black woman loitering by the pumps. Holding what looked like a burner phone. Talking in hushed tones. Walking back and forth like she owned the place. Trouble. Paula picked up the landline. The same landline she'd used for 30 years to call in truck orders and report stray dogs. Yeah, hey. This is Paula over at Kelly's. Got a suspicious person outside. Female. Maybe on something. Talking real strange into some phone. Real shady. You better send someone to check it out. She hung up before the dispatcher could ask more questions. Across town, in a stale police station just above the post office, Officer Randall Cooper sipped flat coffee and leaned back in his creaking chair. Officer Shaw Delaney sat across from him scrolling through his phone. Then the radio crackled. Possible 10 to 96 at Kelly's Fuel and Food. Female subject. Unidentified behavior. Delaney looked up. Finally. Cooper smirked. Let's go see what the freak show is today. They grabbed their belts, threw on their sunglasses, and got into the cruiser like they were suiting up for a scene in Cops. Back at the gas station, Naomi continued the briefing, catching critical details, tracking movements half a world away. Her voice never rose, never trembled. Even as the sound of tires screeching onto gravel interrupted the dry Louisiana air. She lowered the phone and turned. 2 patrol cars. Lights flashing. Both officers jumped out, guns still holstered but hands twitching near them. They moved with the bravado of men who thought they owned the narrative the moment they entered it. Naomi placed the phone gently on the hood of her rental, keeping her palms visible. "Good afternoon, officers," she said evenly. "How can I assist you?" "License and registration," barked Cooper. Naomi nodded. "Certainly." Reaching slowly, "My ID is in my back pocket. I am General Naomi Ellsworth, United States Army. I'm on federal orders." Delaney scoffed. "General, huh? That's a new one." Naomi took out her military ID and federal travel papers, extending them toward the officers. Cooper snatched them, looked down for maybe a second before shaking his head. "This is fake," he said. Naomi blinked. "Sir, I assure you." "Shut up," Delaney cut in. "You think we're stupid? You think that works here?" People were beginning to gather, curious truck drivers, kids getting sodas, station clerks poking their heads outside. Some pointed phones. Some just stared. Naomi saw the crowd growing but kept her tone measured. "I respectfully request you verify my credentials with your supervisor," she said. "This is a serious." Cooper already had his cuffs out. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Naomi didn't move. She stood straighter. "Not in rebellion. In truth. I am a general in the United States Army. You are detaining me unlawfully." Cooper laughed. "Yeah. And I'm Elvis. Turn around." Delaney grabbed her arm roughly. The cuffs locked in place with a bite. Somewhere behind her, the secure phone clattered to the pavement. Voices still echoed faintly from the speaker, Pentagon voices. But the officers didn't hear. Or didn't care. They shoved Naomi against the car. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Phones went up. Naomi stared at the grimy window of Kelly's, her reflection fractured by the grime. In that moment, she wasn't a general. She wasn't even a person. She was a suspect. And the Pentagon was about to explode. At the Department of Defense Command Center in D.C., Lieutenant Commander Bryce Hanley stared at the blinking screen. The secure line to General Ellsworth had gone from static to silence. "General Ellsworth, do you copy?" he repeated into the mic. Colonel Dana Sharp, already sensing something wrong, marched over. "Ping her location. Now." Within seconds, a technician brought up a red dot on the screen. "She's not on base." Sharp narrowed her eyes. "Where?" "Some place called Mosswood." Sharp didn't blink. "Get Barksdale on the line. And Jag. Tell them a flag officer has gone dark in the field. Move." Back in Mosswood, Naomi sat cuffed on the curb. "What's your real name?" Delaney asked. Naomi exhaled slowly. "You have my ID. My travel orders. Everything is there." Cooper snorted. "Lady, you're this close to obstruction." She didn't respond. People whispered. Phones recorded. Paula stood near the doorway, arms crossed, triumphant. No one intervened. Then Delaney's radio sparked to life. "Dispatch to Unit 3. Confirm detained subject." Cooper responded. "Affirmative. Female. Early 40s. Refusing to cooperate." Static. Then a new voice, sharper. "Urgent. Be advised, subject is flagged federal. Repeat, flagged federal. Pentagon has initiated emergency contact. Release immediately and await further instruction." Cooper's face went pale. Delaney's jaw dropped. "What the hell?" Naomi didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched them both. The cuffs came off. Quickly. Sloppily. Ma'am, Cooper mumbled, but Naomi had already turned to retrieve her phone. The screen was cracked. The line dead. She looked up. "You're going to regret this," she said. "Not tomorrow. Today." And then the SUVs arrived. The first SUV hit the lot like a warning shot, black, unmarked, Federal plates, tires hissing against gravel. Then came a second. A third. The convoy pulled in with military precision, boxing in the patrol cars, the gas pumps, the stunned crowd. Doors swung open in near unison, and a wave of tactical urgency poured into the sleepy town of Mosswood. At the front strode Lieutenant Colonel Darren Mosley, mid-40s, tight-cut hair and eyes like steel under pressure. He walked like a man who didn't have time for explanations. His gaze locked on Naomi in an instant. "General Ellsworth, are you injured?" Naomi straightened. Her wrists throbbed, the metal had left faint red marks. "No, Colonel. Minor abrasions. The bigger injury was to their careers." Mosley didn't look at the local cops yet. His people moved in without being asked, forming a perimeter. No drawn weapons. Just presence. Authority. Silence heavy with consequence. Behind Naomi, Cooper and Delaney shrank in place. The smirk Delaney once wore was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed look of a man realizing his next paycheck might come with a court date. Mosley turned at last. "You are hereby ordered to stand down," he said, voice cold and clipped. "Pending federal investigation. Any further action from you may constitute obstruction of justice." Cooper opened his mouth. "We didn't know." "You had documentation in your hand," Mosley cut him off. "You had everything you needed." Delaney stepped forward, trying to recover his edge. She was acting suspicious. Wouldn't answer questions. Mosley tilted his head slightly. "You saw a black woman making a phone call in public. And you made a choice. One that will follow you for the rest of your lives." The crowd was silent now. Even Paula Sweeney had vanished back inside the store, like a cockroach scuttling from a kitchen light. Naomi said nothing. She didn't need to. The Air Force detail escorted her to one of the SUVs. The back door was held open like a gesture of restoration. She slid in, ignoring the dull ache in her wrists, and looked through the tinted glass at the men who had tried to erase her with handcuffs and smirks. The door closed. The convoy pulled out. Inside the SUV, Naomi stared out at the blur of tall grass and leaning telephone poles. Her body was still. Her mind? Not so much. Colonel Mosley sat beside her, reviewing notes on a secure tablet. After a few miles, he broke the silence. "Ma'am, Pentagon has escalated to full coordination. JAG, Civil Rights Division, and Public Affairs have all been looped in. The story's already moving. Someone posted the footage." Naomi turned slightly. "The arrest?" Mosley nodded. "The whole thing. From first approach to the cuffs. It's already on 3 networks. Might be more by now." Naomi didn't reply. Her voice had always been a weapon of precision. She chose not to waste it on rage. "They'll come crawling," Mosley added. "Mosswood PD. The mayor. Anyone with a PR team." "I don't want apologies," Naomi said simply. "I want accountability. In public. In policy. In blood if I have to draw it." Mosley blinked. He'd worked under generals who barked. Who made speeches. Naomi didn't need either. She spoke like a verdict. By the time they reached Barksdale Air Force Base, the media storm had already begun to churn. News vans idled just outside the gate. Hashtags were trending. Naomi's name had become shorthand for a story the country knew too well, one of power ignored, of identity weaponized, of dignity stripped without cause. Inside the base, Naomi was debriefed behind closed doors. She recounted every detail: her arrival, the phone call, the approach, the arrest, the moment they tossed her ID like garbage. Her voice never shook. She answered each question as if reading from a briefing memo, even when the topic veered into personal impact. Behind the glass, Pentagon observers took notes in silence. Some looked down, ashamed. Others simply stunned. That night, in the quiet of her quarters, Naomi sat on the edge of her bunk and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her uniform was folded neatly beside her. Her medals sat in a black velvet box in her duffel. But none of it had protected her. Not her rank. Not her years of service. Not her silence. Her phone buzzed. Retired General Sims saw the video. "Anything you need, Naomi. You say the word." "COL, Annette Bailey, I'm sick. Literally sick. My daughters saw it before I did." "Unknown number, ma'am. I was in your unit in Afghanistan. Thank you for standing tall. We're with you." There were dozens more. From soldiers. From strangers. From young black women who had never worn a uniform but recognized the humiliation in her posture and the fight in her eyes. The next morning, Naomi met with her legal team. Then with Pentagon Public Affairs. Then with a liaison from the White House Office of Public Engagement. They all asked the same thing, dressed in different phrasing. Would she be willing to speak? The administration wanted calm. The military wanted damage control. Naomi wanted neither. "I'll speak," she said. "But not with your script." Saturday. Noon. The sun blazed down on the gates of Barksdale. Rows of cameras clicked into place. Microphones stacked 2 and 3 high. Veterans with folded arms. Families holding signs, "We see you, General." Not just a uniform. And Naomi Ellsworth stepped out in full dress blues. The applause started before she reached the podium. Not loud. Not frantic. Just, real. She waited until the crowd stilled. Then spoke into the microphones, her voice cutting through the buzz of cicadas and satellites. "My name is General Naomi Ellsworth. I have served this country for 29 years. I have led soldiers in combat. Advised presidents. Sworn to protect the ideals written into our Constitution." She let the silence breathe. Yesterday, none of that mattered. She paused, her eyes steady. "I was judged not by the content of my character. Not by the uniform I've earned. But by the color of my skin, and the assumptions made because of it." The reporters scribbled. Camera shutters clicked. But Naomi didn't flinch. "I'm not here for an apology. I am not a victim. I am a soldier. I am a citizen. And what happened in Mosswood is not just about me, it is about every person who has ever been dismissed, degraded, or disrespected because someone couldn't see past their own ignorance." Behind her, Colonel Mosley stood stone-faced. Beside him, civilian leaders and military officials shifted, unprepared for the firestorm they'd hoped to cool. "Dignity," Naomi said. "Respect. Accountability. These are not optional values. They are not negotiable based on prejudice. I will not tolerate a nation where these principles depend on your zip code or your skin tone." She scanned the crowd, found faces watching her, young women, old soldiers, reporters who stopped taking notes and just listened. "Injustice isn't new," she said. "But change only comes when enough people refuse to look away." She finished without flair. "I was not humiliated yesterday. They were. And history will remember it that way." She stepped down. No one asked questions. The applause started slow. Then it spread. Applause that became standing ovations. That became chants. That became a movement. As she walked back toward the base, Naomi moved like she always had, shoulders squared, pace even, eyes forward. She carried more than just herself now. She carried a reckoning. By Sunday morning, Mosswood wasn't a forgotten speck on a Louisiana map anymore, it was the epicenter of a growing national firestorm. The video had spread like a virus, grainy, handheld, and undeniable. In it, a calm black woman identified herself as General Naomi Ellsworth and was handcuffed anyway. The humiliation was quiet, almost surgical. There were no screams. No scuffles. Just a deadly silence, and two officers acting like they were above any consequence. Now, that silence was being answered by millions of voices. Cable news loops replayed the arrest every hour. Talk shows hosted panels dissecting every second of it. Social media boiled over with rage, disbelief, and solidarity. Hashtags surged. Hashtag justice for Naomi. Hashtag salute her. Hashtag not in uniform but still deserves respect. Veterans organizations usually cautious to speak on social issues released statements. General Ellsworth is a decorated American hero. Her treatment is inexcusable. Rank does not shield one from prejudice, but it should never be ignored by it. Civil rights attorneys filed formal complaints by Monday morning. By noon, the Department of Justice had launched an independent investigation into the Mosswood Police Department. By 2 p.m., Governor Ellis Monroe of Louisiana stood in front of reporters and called the incident an appalling miscarriage of justice against a woman whose record speaks louder than any badge waved in her face. Inside the Mosswood Police Department, panic reigned. Chief Vernon Grady had never handled a national press conference in his life. A veteran of deer hunting, barbecues, and small-town disputes, he now faced a forest of microphones under fluorescent lighting that buzzed as loud as the tension in the room. "We regret the misunderstanding," he stammered, sweat forming beneath his weathered cowboy hat. A reporter from Baton Rouge shot her hand up. "Chief Grady, your officers were presented with federal identification and travel orders. Why were they dismissed?" He blinked. High tensions, the situation was confusing. Another voice cut in, "Was race a factor, Chief?" A third, "Do your officers receive training on military protocol or federal jurisdiction?" The press conference unraveled in real time. Grady tried to retreat behind platitudes, but there was no cover. Not when Cooper and Delaney's names had already leaked. Not when anonymous sources from inside the department began talking. Prior complaints against both officers. Allegations of excessive force. Reports of racial profiling. All swept under the rug. Until now. In Washington, General Ellsworth's case had sparked a rare alignment across military and civilian corridors of power. Her career record was beyond dispute: commendations, battlefield leadership, diplomatic roles, even classified missions with White House-level clearance. Now her name was being debated in Congress. Some whispered she might be tapped to lead a task force on civil-military equity. Others wanted her face on billboards. "This is what leadership looks like." But Naomi hadn't asked for any of that. In her temporary quarters at Barksdale, she sat with a worn yellow legal pad. No cameras. No speeches. Just pages of handwritten notes. She was building something. Not just a response. A movement. That evening, Colonel Dana Sharp flew in from D.C. in person. She knocked gently on Naomi's door and entered without waiting. "You've caused quite the ripple, General," Sharp said, half smiling. "Good," Naomi replied without looking up. "Ripples become waves." Sharp handed over a thick manila envelope. "Preliminary investigation summary. You'll want to see this." Naomi flipped it open. Cooper, 6 prior internal complaints. Delaney, 4, including 1 sustained use of force issue. Training gaps, critical failures in federal ID verification. Racial bias sensitivity, non-existent. They were walking lawsuits before they touched me, Naomi murmured. Sharp sat beside her. There's talk of making you the face of the reform panel. No. Sharp blinked. No. I'm not a mascot. I'm not a campaign, Naomi said firmly. I'll lead. But I'm not doing it for optics. This isn't just about me. Sharp leaned back. You're not the only one saying that, ma'am. By Wednesday, the fallout was unavoidable. Randall Cooper and Shaw Delaney were officially suspended. Their union tried to delay disciplinary hearings. It didn't work. Paula Sweeney, the gas station clerk, issued a half-hearted statement claiming she acted out of concern for customer safety. Within hours, screenshots of her Facebook page littered with racially charged memes began circulating. She was fired by Friday. The mayor of Mosswood, who once joked about the town being too quiet for trouble, was now issuing televised apologies and promising community policing reforms. But Naomi hadn't said another word publicly. People waited. What would the general say next? The next Saturday, Naomi appeared at a roundtable forum in New Orleans, seated beside a young black veteran who had been profiled and arrested 2 years earlier for resisting arrest, after being mistaken for a trespasser outside his own apartment. Naomi listened first. Then she stood. This isn't just about a badge or a uniform, she said. It's about the mental checkpoint that happens in some minds the second they see black skin and authority in the same space. Silence. I'm not the first this happened to. But I intend to be one of the last. That clip went viral, too. On Capitol Hill, congressional leaders began drafting what they called the Ellsworth Accountability Standards Act, legislation aimed at requiring police departments to verify all military IDs with federal systems. Mandating racial bias training tied to federal grant eligibility. Establishing a joint military-civilian misconduct tracking database. Some said it would never pass. Naomi didn't care. She showed up at every hearing anyway. In uniform. Taking notes. Asking questions. She looked each senator in the eye and made them explain their votes. They couldn't look away. Meanwhile, her life hadn't gotten easier. Death threats came. So did racist hate mail. But for every letter of bile, there were 10 more from mothers. Soldiers. Teachers. Teenagers who said, when they threw cuffs on you, I saw my mom. I didn't know generals looked like us. Thank you for not breaking. Naomi kept them in a drawer. On nights when the fight felt too heavy, she opened it. And remembered who she was fighting for. Late one evening, 2 weeks after the incident, Naomi walked alone past the edge of the airfield. A young airman saw her and paused. He saluted. She returned it without a word. As he passed, she heard him murmur under his breath. You changed something, ma'am. She turned slowly. I'm just getting started. By week 3, the question wasn't, what happened to General Naomi Ellsworth? Everyone already knew. The question now was, what are we going to do about it? And depending on where you stood, the answer either terrified you, or gave you hope. In Washington, Naomi's name was spoken with the same reverence reserved for legends, but behind closed doors, not everyone cheered. She'd disrupted more than just a racist traffic stop. She'd cracked a mirror, and every level of power, from local sheriffs to federal committee chairs, saw their reflection in the shards. Some senators said she was too aggressive. Some columnists called her a general with a grudge. A few whispers inside the Pentagon even suggested she had damaged military-civilian relations. But Naomi didn't blink. Because for every whisper in a marble hallway, there was a voice rising on the street. And those voices were tired of being polite. At a town hall in Baton Rouge, a young black woman stood and said, General Ellsworth didn't make a scene. The world made one for her. At a VFW post in Atlanta, a retired white Marine said. If this can happen to a 4-star general, it can happen to my granddaughter. At Howard University, a student assembly passed a motion to rename their campus ROTC Center. The Naomi Ellsworth Leadership Hall. Naomi didn't ask for statues. She asked for audits. Within a month, the Ellsworth Accountability Standards Act had 65 co-sponsors in Congress. Opponents tried to stall it. Too reactionary. Too much federal oversight. But every time they stalled, another video went viral. Another story broke. Another veteran, teacher, doctor, or parent stepped forward with a new example of how power had ignored dignity. The tide was rising. And Naomi stood tall at its crest. One night, she got a call from her father. He'd never called during a campaign like this. Always supported her quietly, respectfully, from the sidelines. Naomi, he said, voice gruff, I served in Nam with men who wouldn't tie their boots without asking me first. And I've been pulled over more times than I can count. She listened, waiting. But this thing you're doing now, he continued. This is the biggest battle we've ever fought. And you're winning it with no bullets. Just truth. Naomi swallowed hard. I learned that from you, she whispered. Back in Mosswood, reality hit hard. Cooper and Delaney resigned before they could be fired. Paula Sweeney disappeared, moved out of state, deleted all social media. The town council passed mandatory anti-bias training ordinances, hoping to stem the tide of lawsuits. But the damage was already done. The name Mosswood had become synonymous with a lesson in arrogance, and the cost of judging the wrong woman. At Barksdale, Naomi's office was stacked with binders and letters. She read as many as she could. Some she answered. Some she didn't have to. One caught her eye. Handwritten. No return address. It read. They tried to reduce you to just another profile. Instead, you became a profile in courage. Keep going. She pinned it to the wall. Right beside a framed copy of her first commission papers from West Point. By month 2, the law passed the House. It was headed to the Senate. And Naomi was called in to testify. The hearing room was packed, press, aides, activists, veterans, politicians all leaning forward as she took her seat. The chairwoman cleared her throat. General Ellsworth, we welcome your testimony today regarding S.1453, the Ellsworth Accountability Standards Act. Your insights are more than relevant. Naomi didn't prepare a speech. She prepared a message. I'm not here because I wear stars, she began. I'm here because this country keeps finding ways to unsee the people it claims to serve. Silence. I have worn the uniform for nearly 3 decades. And in Mosswood, none of it mattered. I was not viewed as a commander. I was not seen as a citizen. I was reduced. She let the word settle. And I stood back up. A Republican senator shifted in his seat. General, what would you say to those concerned that this bill federalizes too much control over local policing? Naomi turned to face him. I'd say the federal government had to step in because your local departments weren't doing the job. Murmurs rippled through the room. She didn't stop. This isn't about politics. It's about procedure. It's about respect. And it's about protecting the people who protect us, whether they wear fatigues, badges, scrubs, or name tags. The chairwoman leaned forward. Do you believe this legislation will prevent what happened to you from happening again? Naomi exhaled. No. But it will make it harder to hide. After the hearing, a Capitol janitor stopped Naomi in the hallway. He didn't say a word. Just gave her a nod. A deep, respectful nod, the kind that said, I saw what they did. And I see what you're doing now. Naomi nodded back. That night, she walked alone down Constitution Avenue, the Capitol dome glowing above. She thought about silence. How often she'd been told it was the smart choice. The safe choice. But nothing safe ever changed the world. So she kept walking. Each step forward, quiet, but unstoppable. 2 months to the day after Naomi was handcuffed in a dusty gas station lot, the Senate convened for the final vote. The chamber was unusually full for a Friday afternoon. On the gallery floor, Naomi sat silently beside Colonel Mosley, both in uniform. She wasn't supposed to be there, not officially. But no one had dared stop her. Not this time. The senators voted one by one, voices echoing off marble and memory. Aye. Aye. Nay. Aye. The final count was read aloud. 68 in favor. 29 against. 3 abstained. The Ellsworth Accountability Standards Act had passed. There was no applause. No confetti. Just the sound of a page turning in American history. Afterward, in the hallway, reporters rushed toward Naomi. General Ellsworth, any comments? Do you feel vindicated? Do you think this law will really change things? She raised a hand. Just one. Then she said calmly, it's not about vindication. It's about visibility. And then she walked away. That weekend, her story aired on 60 Minutes. She sat across from the anchor in a modest office at Barksdale, no dramatic lighting, no scripted tears. The anchor asked, General, did you ever feel rage? Naomi paused. I felt insulted. Not just for me. For everyone who's ever had their service dismissed because it didn't come in a form others respected. And how do you stay composed? The anchor asked. Naomi tilted her head. Composure isn't the absence of anger. It's the discipline of purpose. That line replayed in news clips, interviews, classroom lectures. It showed up on protest signs and in op-eds. The discipline of purpose. Back in Mosswood, the gas station had shut down. Paula Sweeney's former storefront had a "For Lease" sign, the windows dark. The police department had been gutted, new leadership, mandatory federal oversight, and monthly transparency audits. Some locals complained. Others said it was the first time they felt safe. Cooper and Delaney had both quietly relocated out of state. Neither issued public statements. But the silence spoke volumes. Months passed. Naomi returned to service, but not the same way. She declined promotions. Declined high-profile Pentagon positions. Declined book deals. She focused on mentorship, creating a leadership initiative for young officers, especially women of color, designed not just to elevate their careers, but to shield them from what she'd faced. She called it, Operation Visible Command. Her first class filled in 3 hours. One crisp October morning, Naomi received a package at her desk. No return address. Inside was a folded American flag, and a note written on military issue paper. General Ellsworth, I was once like those men in Mosswood. I saw what I was trained to see. Then I saw what they did to you. And I couldn't unsee it. Thank you for making me better. Naomi placed the note next to her framed silver star. Quietly. On Veterans Day, she was asked to speak at the Lincoln Memorial. She almost declined. Then decided otherwise. Thousands stood beneath the granite figure of Lincoln, bundled in jackets, hands over hearts. Naomi stepped up to the podium, medals gleaming against her uniform. But her voice, when she spoke, was soft. Human. I stand here not because of what was done to me, she said. But because of what I chose to do in return. She scanned the crowd. This nation does not change because we wait for permission. It changes because someone dares to speak when silence is easier. She held up a single sheet of paper, the original transcript of her secure call, the one that was dropped when she was arrested. I never got to finish this briefing. Laughter and tears rose in equal measure. I guess I had a different kind of mission that day. As the ceremony ended, a young boy, maybe 8 or 9, ran up, tugging his father by the hand. He wore a child-sized ROTC hoodie. He stared at Naomi like she was a statue come to life. "Are you really a general?" he asked, eyes wide. Naomi crouched down and smiled. "Yes," she said. "But more importantly, I'm someone who didn't let them silence me." "Are you gonna stop the bad guys?" She nodded. "I already did." The boy looked impressed. "Can I be like you?" Naomi touched his shoulder gently. "You can be better." That night, Naomi sat alone on her porch under the Louisiana stars. No cameras. No microphones. Just the quiet hum of cicadas and memory. She thought of that phone call, the one she never got to finish. The moment 2 officers thought they could reduce her to a problem. The sting of handcuffs. The echo of laughter from people who saw only what they expected to see. And then she thought of now. Of all the people who wrote, stood, marched, spoke. All because she didn't break. Didn't scream. Didn't fold. She picked up her phone, opened her notes app, and typed. "If they mistake your silence for weakness, let your actions educate them. Dignity doesn't shout. It endures." She hit save. And leaned back. Not to rest. But to ready herself. Because the fight wasn't over. But it had heard her name now. And it would never forget it.